Hi everyone, welcome back to the Geography Hog, and today I'm going to be trying to divide the UK into states. Now originally the idea was to do 50 of these, but I quickly realised that wasn't going to be possible, so I had to shrink it down to 40. Essentially, I'm going to start in the southeast, going through them one by one, and I'm going to gradually go through the rest of England, and then do Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland after. Okay, just disclaimer, don't take this too seriously. This is sort of like 50% serious. However, I did create some rules for this. All of them needed to be given a capital and be at least vaguely justifiable as a state, and they also both had to have both less than 8 million people, which is proportionally the same as California in the US, and more than 120,000 people, which is proportionally about the same as Wyoming. Okay, now I've set up these rules, let's go. So I spent quite a long time thinking about how I was going to do London, and eventually I decided on doing a North London and a South London rather than doing Inner and Outer London, for example, because that way I felt I could give both parts of London a clear centre, and it felt like that way I'd make both sides more equal. When it came to how I was going to define London, I decided it was going to be any of the local government districts where over half the people lived in the Greater London built up area, which meant that some districts from the home counties were going to be incorporated into the two sides of London. So here is North London, which includes all of Greater London north of the Thames, as well as parts of the counties of Hertfordshire and Essex, including towns like Watford, Harlow and St Albans. The state contains most of London's most iconic landmarks like Big Ben, Westminster Abbey and St Paul's Cathedral, as well as London's original core in the City of London. Additional areas also give the state part of the Chiltern Hills as well as Epping Forest, which are all fantastic green spaces. Most of the district is obviously urban and built up, with only small areas of more rural land and districts like Epping Forest around the edges. I decided to place the capital in the City of London itself because, after all, London's ancient core is what this state is based on. The state has a population of over 6.5 million people, which I think makes it the most populous state I created here. It also contains Camden, which has the joint highest GDP per head in the country. South London is all of London south of the River Thames, as well as the districts of Gravesham and Dartford in Kent. However, it also contains a large chunk of Surrey, extending all the way to the Sussex border in places, which leaves Surrey in three smaller disconnected pieces. So Sussex is going to be growing quite a bit by incorporating large pieces of Surrey. I decided to do this because Sussex seems to be the best possible option to put this area in, because it was largely too rural for London and it didn't all border Kent or Berkshire, so I couldn't really put it with them. I also had to annex a very small part of Hampshire to make this happen, but I don't think they'll mind. It does give Sussex a very recognisable shape with its panhandle too. The state has a little over 2 million people and takes up 1,807 square miles in area, and since London has expanded, Sussex is now officially a home county. In terms of nature, it's the first state so far to contain a national park, containing much of the South Downs within its borders. The largest city and capital in the state is Brighton, whose built-up area includes Worthing and a total of over 450,000 people. I position the capital here because it's coastal and roughly centrally located within the state. Crawley is the second largest city in the state, with around 180,000 people.
And now Kent and Essex are about to lose some more land with the creation of the Thames Estuary State. This state includes the Medway area of Kent as well as all of southern Essex, excluding the parts that have already been given to North London. The state is also largely urban, with some exceptions on the Essex side in places like Foulness Island. The state may only take up 388 square miles and has a population of nearly 900,000 people, with three urban areas over 100,000 people lying within it. This all gives it a population density of 2,308 people per square mile. It would also benefit from having the port of Tilbury, which is a major port serving London. And the largest urban areas here are Southend, with nearly 300,000 people in the urban area, which includes Rayleigh and some other areas. And then Medway, with nearly 250,000 people. I'm going to make Grays the capital because Medway's too disconnected from the rest of the state, and it is close to the port of Tilbury, and I also decided Southend is too far east to really make sense. And now, the Garden of England, or at least most of it. Kent is indisputably historically important, with a World Heritage Site contained within the city of Canterbury, which also holds the oldest church in England, along with many other historical sites. There's also Dover, a strategically important town which has been the site of many attempted invasions due to being the closest part of the country to the continent. This state has lost Medway in the north because I felt it had more in common with South Essex than the rest of Kent does, and this new version of Kent still has a population of 1.35 million and takes up 1,228 square miles. The largest urban areas within this state are Thanet with 125,000 people and Maidstone with just barely fewer at 108,000 people. However, it's also home to a lot of beautiful countryside like the High Weald and Kent Downs. I eventually decided to make Canterbury the capital here due to its roughly central location and historic importance.
Chiltern will be the rest of Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, bar Milton Keynes, and South Oxfordshire. This is because it includes every district that the Chiltern Hills lies on, except those already annexed to London, as well as other areas that would be left isolated from other states that had to be included, like Luton. I excluded Milton Keynes because this state is supposed to be largely rural, except where I had no choice. And Milton Keynes, I could exclude it, so I did. Also, it doesn't have the best reputation, so I can't imagine they'd be too upset at losing it. Anyway, the state will have 1.3 million people within its borders and will take up 1,389 square miles of land. The largest urban areas within the state will be Luton with 258,000 people, followed by High Wycombe with 133,000. I decided to make Aylesbury the capital because it feels less isolated from the rest of the state than somewhere like Luton, and I can't imagine the residents wanting Luton as the capital. Obviously, the Chiltern Hills are the main natural area within the state.
Berkshire will be the rest of Oxfordshire, along with Berkshire itself. Historically, Berkshire stretched much further into what is now Oxfordshire, and so to reunite that space, we're going to give much more of Oxfordshire to Berkshire. This state's southeast portion is largely urban with towns like Slough and Reading, and the rest is largely rural, excluding Oxford, which obviously has a world-renowned university in it. The largest urban area in the state is Reading with 318,000 people, followed by Oxford with 171,000 people, and I made Oxford the capital because it feels more representative of the state as a whole than towns of Reading or Slough do, which are both tucked away in the southeastern corner and quite close to London. North Hampshire takes up all the rest of Hampshire, excluding a small area around Aldershot that I previously gave to Sussex, which adds up to just over 670,000 people in just over 1,000 square miles of land. I decided against putting this with Berkshire because I decided there was a lack of real historic or modern connection between the two, so I kept it separate. The largest urban area is Basingstoke, but Winchester is the capital due to its historical importance as a cathedral city and the capital of the Anglo-Saxon Kingdom of Wessex. South Hampshire will be a mainly urban state consisting of the urban areas within South Hampshire and South East Dorset. The state consists mainly of two separate but reasonably nearby urban areas, the South Hampshire conurbation, which is the continuous urban area connecting Southampton and Portsmouth, and it is the 7th most populated urban area in the UK, with 856,000 people in it, and is home to an important naval base. The other main urban area is the Bournemouth Poole urban area, and the former was even historically part of Hampshire. This one has a population of 466,000 people, although some of the urban area lies outside of the state I've created here. This all contributes to giving South Hampshire a total of 1.7 million people, despite only taking up 494 square miles. The New Forest National Park, which also stretches into Wiltshire and takes up over half of this state's land area, is also part of the district and will provide some much needed rural seclusion and nature in what would otherwise be an almost fully urbanised state. I decided that Southampton should be the capital here. It is the largest city within the state and has also been an important city historically. So we're going to go from one of the smallest states by area that I've created to one of the largest. This is by far the largest state I've created in this region of the country, and the reason I grouped all of East Anglia together is I couldn't think of a good way to divide it up. I considered splitting Cambridgeshire and or Essex off, but that would leave a fairly small Essex state that wouldn't have made much sense on its own. And merging North Essex with Cambridgeshire also wouldn't have made much sense, particularly considering that I'd taken away most of Essex's population centres, save for Colchester and Chelmsford. Some of you may be a bit irritated with the borders here, but I'll try to explain. The northern part of Essex is culturally similar enough to East Anglia as a whole for me to include it. I included Chelmsford and Maldon because they weren't really connected to the Thames estuary like the parts of Essex to the south of them, but also weren't connected to London in the ways that South West Essex was. Aside from that, I've included the three counties almost always considered part of East Anglia: Cambridgeshire, Suffolk and Norfolk, but perhaps most controversially I've included the far south of Lincolnshire in East Anglia. The reason for this is that this area is geographically part of the Fens, which makes it seem much more connected to West Norfolk and Cambridgeshire than to the East Midlands at large. This state is incredibly flat as a whole, with the highest point being less than 150 metres, or about 500 feet above sea level. The largest urban area within this state is Norwich with 213,000 people, followed by Ipswich with 179,000 people. I decided that I had to make the capital be within Norfolk or Suffolk because these are the core of the region, and so I decided to make Norwich the capital. The region also has a lot of natural areas, including the Norfolk Broads, which were created from the flooding of deep holes called turbidries that peat was extracted from in Norfolk and Suffolk. There's also Dedham Vale crossing the Essex-Suffolk border and the Suffolk Coast and Heaths area, both of which are areas of outstanding natural beauty. The whole state includes about 2.6 million people and takes up over 6,000 square miles, which makes it larger than Northern Ireland in size, and it's also larger than the US state of Connecticut. So, that's the end of part 1. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you want, have a good day.